Don't engage alone. We do this together.
Yeah!
We got it! We got it!
New 52 booklet.
Somebody clip this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Comics League. I am Jared, and I am here to discuss the problem with Superman. Now, to be clear here, this is again not necessarily a problem with the character itself. The character of Superman is awesome. It's one of my favorite characters of all time. Just okay. It's mainly DC's handling of him, just like my Wonder Woman video was last week. So here's the thing. The first problem with Superman that I see is that he's allowed to go stale with nostalgia. Now, here's what I mean by that. It's like he always has to be in one central area, one central characterization, no matter what. And that's the Christopher Reeve version. I'll talk about that later, but it's specifically the idea that like nostalgia holds him back because yes, to a degree, let me put it to you this way. I understand 110% that everyone has their version of Superman that they like, that they consider the definitive version. You're allowed to do that 110% because that's what's fun about being a fan. The problem is when people require their version of the character to always be that version of the character. Like they want Superman to always just be straight up the Christopher Reeve Superman. And I'm like, to a degree, you can take elements from Reeve and bring him over, but that can't be the main characterization of Superman because that falls out of style real quick. Next up, I'm Jared from Comics League. You know it's coming up. He's too dependent on Lois. And here's the thing about it. It's like when you look at the thing about it, there's too much time spent on Lois in the Superman books because it's Superman. If you want to focus on Lois, give her own book. I know why DC won't, because she can't sell a book. They've tried this before many times. And by competent writers like Greg Rucka. I personally don't like his Wonder Woman run, but his other stuff is great. But the point is that she's not exactly this big character that people think she is. Linking him so inextricably, I think that's a word, to Lois, really, I think that really holds the character back. And that's been my point here, because you can have various elements of a different version of Superman that don't have to be with Lois. And again, it gets back to nostalgia, as a matter of fact, because it's like, listen, I get that like Superman has always been with Lois. He hasn't, but let's go off of that argument. If that's true, if this is the way the fans want Superman to be, the book should be selling better than it actually is. That's the thing. Ironically, one of the times where Superman was selling the most, New 52, was when he was not with Lois. I think you guys know who he was with, particularly if you watch my channel for any number of times. But this is no Super Wonder video. Number 3, he's not allowed to grow past Christopher Reeve. And here's what I mean by that. Because regardless of like creative decisions in Man of Steel that people disagreed with, and that's fine, you can have your disagreements with it. The complaint that I kept seeing was it's not like Christopher Reeve Superman. There's no changing in a phone booth. There's no this. There's no this. There's no this. And I'm like, first off, who has phone booths anymore? But the point is, I get what they're going for. And my good friend Nick from the Phoenix Press summed this up pretty well, is that people wanted that feeling you got after you watched the Christopher Reeve Superman movie, and that you felt good. You felt great. Arguably, you kind of did after Man of Steel, but you know what? I'll ignore that. And I understand that. It's just the thing is that he's not allowed to grow past that general characterization. Because if you look at because here's the thing, Superman and Lois is the proper way to do this, because you take elements from Reeve and you take elements from Cavill, put them together, and guess what? You get a pretty good Superman story. And by the way, Superman and Lois is basically the characterization of Superman that Snyder was building to if he had had the opportunity to complete a story. But it's not a Snyder video. And then he can't grow past post-crisis Superman. And the problem with that, see, here's the thing. I see so many people talking about post-crisis like it was this perfect era of DC. It wasn't. It was convoluted as hell. And it almost led to the company being shut down. And the thing about it is that I saw people argue that, like, well, we would have accepted the new 52 if post-crisis had gotten a proper conclusion. They didn't have the time to give it a proper conclusion because they had a firm date that they had to increase sales by. They had to do that, and it led to Flashpoint. And it led to one of the eras that made Superman relevant for the first time. Because here's the other thing with Superman is that this is kind of there. He struggles with relevancy a lot. Now, relevancy and being iconic are two very different things. Yes, he's iconic because everyone knows what the Superman S looks like. What I mean by relevancy is that when you think of Superman, a lot of people think of him as that save a cat from a tree, jokey character. And that's not all he is. Even in post-crisis comics, he kills Zod many times. He has some very dark moments in the comics. So really, you can't say that that is Chris Reeve Superman. If anything, Chris Reeve Superman, really, when you think about it, is pre-crisis in terms of like the crazy stuff he can do. But the point is, the thing about Superman, what I'm going to leave you guys with is, for Superman to be able to get more people on board, you have to allow him to grow with the times. Because if you don't allow that, you lose the opportunity to be relevant to the audience. Captain America had that problem. MCU updated him for the modern audiences. I know that's a bad term, but in this time I mean it's like you put him in a situation that you and I go through. And actually, I saw a fantastic tweet. I'll try and pull it up. If I can't, I'll summarize it. It's the reason why we still talk about the Greek gods and the stories of myth and legend is because they were stories about these mythological beings, but were allowed to face human problems. That's the problem, is that people don't let Superman deal with human problems. And yes, I get that, like, he's supposed to be this god that's supposed to be above all that stuff, but to a certain degree, you have to go in that direction. That's one of the many reasons why Batman is more popular. But anyway, those are my 4 reasons why I think there's a problem with Superman, not as a character, because the foundation of the character is great. It's just you kind of have to rethink how we handle the character in comics and movies. But regardless, let me know below what you guys think of my arguments, and consider becoming a member, because if you become a member, you get these Comic Talk episodes a day early, and you get access to a special members only live stream that happens the second Thursday of every month. And hope to see you guys around the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lame. She belongs with General Zod. Zois and Maxibat for life. See you later.